Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Mars in Aquarius. I've been doing a series of Mars in the different astrological signs, and I've gone from Aries, and now I'm almost at the end of this series in Aquarius. And if you need to know where your Mars is at, please check below this video. I have a link that will take you to this list of the dates. And just check out your birth date and where Mars was when you were born. If there are two Mars signs, if Mars changed signs on that date, you might want to listen to both videos because you will probably see yourself in both signs to some degree. Mars is the way that we act. It's our drive. It's our energy level. It can be what we desire, so that's what makes us act. Mars can be how we express anger, if we express anger. But everyone does in their own way, even if it's passive-aggressive, right? So everyone expresses anger in some way. And it's also libido, sex drive. So let's think about what Aquarius is. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. Its ruler is Uranus. Also Saturn. We don't talk too much about Saturn because it doesn't really kind of flies in the face of what Uranus represents. And Uranus is a planet that has an influence of erratic behavior, unpredictable behavior, non-conformist behavior, revolutionary or rebellious behavior. And Aquarius rules the 11th house of groups, friendships. We could just say the collective versus the individual, which we would associate more with the 5th house, the opposite sign of Leo, and its own creative self-expression, or even the 1st house of the self, ruled by Aries. And that is that's another difference than the 11th house, because the collective is the group mindset. You know, when you belong to a group and you share certain qualities and you feel that sense of unity, this is kind of what Aquarius is all about. This is the irony, though. This is what really is strange about Aquarius, is that it believes in this ideal, and yet it really, really wants to be a nonconformist. How can you be a nonconformist when you love groups so much? So it's almost like Aquarius needs a group in order to rebel against it. That's almost what I'm getting the feeling about. But Aquarius believes in these humanitarian principles that, you know, we're all in it together. It's about the collective instead of the individual. And they tend to be very much living their lives like that. And I'm talking about Aquarius as a sign, maybe the sun in Aquarius. So if somebody has Venus in Aquarius, even in terms of their romantic interests, they don't see it in the same way. I have Venus in Aquarius. A romantic relationship is about more to them than just some kind of passionate thing. There's like there has to be an intellectual connection. There has to be that sense of maybe standing for something more than just, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, like kind of a reformer energy is associated with the 11th house. And that Aquarius energy permeates any of the personal planets that it falls into. And this is no different when it's in with Mars. So there can be like whenever you're talking about Mars, you could be talking about a zealot. And in the 11th house, you could be talking about social justice. So a social justice warrior. And I'm using that not in a pejorative way. I'm saying seriously that somebody with Mars in Aquarius may be concerned about those they consider to be less fortunate, underserved, voiceless. And so that can get them involved in, let's say, some kind of group. Like that could be their hobby, is to belong to groups that try to make life better for other people, advocacy types of situations, or maybe they do that for a living. But regardless, any kind of group that has a humanitarian bent is very appealing to Mars and Aquarius, because the Mars part of it is about fighting, is about being that warrior in this context. And that is exactly what is appealing to these types of people. Now, this can extend to groups that are kind of what we would call revolutionary, or even an anarchist group, something that is kind of outside the mainstream of political groups, that has this whiff or more than a whiff of rebellion in it, and that goes against the establishment, because that is one of their main objectives. With Mars and Aquarius, they're trying to tear down things that are part of the status quo. That is something that really turns them off, is the status quo. But because you could call this person a contrarian, if they happen to be in an environment where there are a lot of people who are, so-called progressives or something like that, they may be rabidly right-wing or conservative, whatever you want to call it. And they may be, but in an even more extreme or shocking kind of a way. So if it was during the 60s, I'm saying shocking, but I mean something that really gets under the skin of other people, because it's outside any of these groups. Because nowadays, this is becoming more and more popular, where people are not buying into the two mainstream versions. It's like controlled opposition and, all that stuff. And a lot of people, I don't know if this is because this is the Aquarian age and people are just naturally turned off to whatever is presented to them as choices. But with Mars and Aquarius, if they are in an environment that is considered very liberal, they will be the conservative sometimes. And it's not because they're trying to troll anybody. It's that they don't want to conform. Conformity to them, regardless of what the ideology is something that they find distasteful. And it can be kind of tricky if somebody has a sun in Taurus, for instance, and has Mars in Aquarius, because they may have certain qualities that really do not go along with Aquarius. And of course, those two signs are fixed and they form a square. And that person can really confuse the people around him or her because of their very contradictory attitudes. And this will also increase the stubbornness because they're both fixed signs, something like that. If you have somebody whose sun is in Aries, this can really give a nature that is quite resistant to conformity and cooperation. And Mars we associate with a lot of activity and energy. Because Aquarius is an air sign, this can be more on the mental level than with physical pursuits. And Aquarius, I think, is fairly categorized or characterized is a better way of putting it, as the mad scientist who might have a table full of all kinds of beakers that are, the covers are off and everything seems like it's a mess, but they have a method to their madness that allows them to do what they do. And this is how Mars in Aquarius is. People might actually underestimate them because they might think that they're a kook, but they can be very successful because they have natural intelligence and also a drive to increase their intellectual knowledge. And that is very important to them. They pursue education and whether it's self-taught or otherwise, very zealously. And they're looking for that. They're attracted to that as well. And one great thing about these people is that they're live and let live. Even if they're a zealot, even if they have their own, sometimes they might come off as self-righteous because they have very strong beliefs about things. They don't believe that it's their job to tell other people how to live. So let's talk about the sex life. Speaking of this, I don't like to emphasize one area. I just want to include it in there. This could be the person who is open to an open relationship even because they're just not jealous. Obviously, other factors will either support or counter this, because if the person is actually a Sun in Taurus or has Venus in Taurus, this may be modified, or maybe the Moon in Scorpio, and they will not want to share their partner with others. And that's something that just would not appeal to them. Whereas you might get somebody else who also wants a non-conventional relationship. Actually, speaking of that, because let's say the person has a Sun in Capricorn, this type of Mars can make the person feel like they're a little bit crazy because they have certain desires that don't conform with what they're supposed to want in life. So again, this is where astrology gets tricky, because sometimes people's charts show a lot of contradiction, a lot of differing desires. And these desires, depending on how strong they are, can cause the person to feel like they don't know who they are and what they want. And definitely Mars in Aquarius can be that wild card in the person's chart, and because this is how you act. So this can really be influential in the choices that such a person makes. So with sex, this person is very detached. And because they're detached, this can actually be quite attractive to others, because they may perceive it like if a Mars and Aquarius person is dealing with an Aries, that Aries person may think that this person's playing hard to get, not knowing that this is the way that this person goes about life in general, but definitely when it comes to sexual relationships, that they're just, they can take it or leave it. And that kind of thing just drives people crazy, because they want the other person to be very, desirable, and they want to feel, they want to feel like they're desired, and yet they don't always. A Mars and Aquarius person will not necessarily express themselves that way and act like, oh my gosh, I have to be with you and all that. So they may be very detached to the extreme. And they're just, in general, I would say they're kind of cold fish sometimes. Aquarius as a sign in general. and not touchy-feely. There can even be like kind of a quirk of not wanting to be touched. Definitely, as with Venus and Aquarius, I think that people like this are more attracted to someone when the other person is detached. I think they will definitely be repelled by those who are very intense and demanding in terms of having expectations that the Mars and Aquarius person do this or do that in the relationship. Aquarius rules technology, and this can obviously involve the internet. So any kind of thing where they are like expressing their sexuality through phone sex, through the internet, may be appealing to them because the detachment is involved. They can feel that sense of comfort not knowing that they are like being suffocated in a relationship where they don't have freedom of movement the way that they want to have. Sometimes I think that this can lead to a trap, as it can with other Venus or with other Aquarius placements, where the person is actually attracted to people who are married, who are living far away, because then they don't have to have that 24/7 relationship. And the distance is very comforting to them. Depending on how self-aware the Mars and Aquarius person is, they may or may not understand this. And they may really think, I want this relationship. Maybe if they have, again, a sun in Taurus or sun in Cancer. I don't know if you can have every possible combination with Mars. You might not be able to. But let's say a sun in Scorpio and you have Mars in Aquarius, you may swear up and down that you're looking for a soulmate relationship, and yet you tend to have a pattern where you fall in love with people who are living, in another country or far away across the country, or they are married, they're taken somehow, and you just don't get to spend that much time with them. So I think with Mars and Aquarius, there has to be a real reflection on the person's attitudes about relationship, because if you really want a relationship and you feel frustrated that it always seems to go south, it could be because you're not quite on the same page with yourself. You have parts of yourself, you're ambivalent, in other words. You have parts of yourself that are very wanting of relationship, and other parts that are very leery of a relationship. I think that it's safe to say that if somebody's trying to get a Mars and Aquarius person to do something, it's going to be pretty difficult. Maybe if they use reverse psychology on them, then they will rebel against what the person wants, and then the other person gets what they want. If you are a Mars and Aquarius person, really examine your knee-jerk responses to requests from other people, or even what it is that motivates you to do something. And make sure you're being motivated for the right reasons, that you're not just doing it because you have this thought in the back of your mind that if everybody else likes something, there must be something wrong with it. Sometimes the mainstream gets it right. Sometimes being different doesn't mean being better. But I admire those kinds of principles. I just think that sometimes people are more like contrarians, where they just want to kind of like make their mark by not doing what other people are doing. And it can lead to problems in relationships where you have this inability to agree to what other people want, your partner wants, and or other people that you're dealing with. And that could lend you the reputation of being uncooperative. And because you are being uncooperative, you might not be doing it because you're being a jerk, but it still comes across as somebody who's extremely hard to, who's extremely difficult in general. And that can create a lot of misunderstandings between you and others. But this is definitely a position of somebody who is unique, and they're inspirational because they march to their own drummer. They don't care if they seem odd, different. That's all the better for them, and they're attracted to others who are like that. And this can also be the type of, physical attraction that you have for another person. If they look kind of offbeat, if they look different, you might be attracted to them. If they look intelligent, that might be your thing. Glasses may be a turn on to you. Okay, that's what I have for you. If you'd like a private reading, like a natal chart interpretation, I'll link that below. Thank you for listening. Bye.